Brigadier Ganesham garu from Palle Srujana. Sir has been a very interesting and inspiring journey from being a brigadier in Indian Army, then heading the Bharat Dynamics Limited, and from starting a grassroots innovations organization called Palle Srujana. Sir believes in the wisdom of our Indian villages and the conviction with which uh, Sir says that local problems should be addressed locally, and that's the way of sustainability. Uh, it's an amazing journey with Palle Srujana, and the way knowledge transfer happens in small groups and behavioral change that Sir focuses on. It's very very important, and I have been a um person of who benefited from that journey, Shodhyatra. I now invite Brigadier Ganesham Garu to address the audience.
Palle Srujana, as the name implies, is what we believe in the creativity of people in the villages. We believe that they have learned that they have nurtured that creativity by harmony and living in long years with the nature. In fact, we have a very firm belief in Palle Srujana that villages are made by God while cities are made by humans. Generally, it's right. It can be debatable, but generally right, because nature bestows so much in the villages, and villagers try to utilize it for their survival. And in the modern world, they are making us live in the cities. But the society has not realized the significance and the importance and the necessity of sustaining villages. In the bargain, they try to make villages part of a human society or human development, and thereby I think we are slowly losing the nature. So this is our experience while we travel in the villages, we walk in the villages the last 16 years. It's an organization, a voluntary organization. We want to identify those wonderful solutions people find in the villages because nobody is coming to solve their problems. The emphasis of people's problems by public innovations or private innovations is based on some criteria, but not on the problems of masses. This is my experience. I lived 70 winters in this country, 72 winters in fact. So when they get little helpless and restless, they get angry, and some of them, when they get angry, they become innovators. And this is where we find them. It's not easy to find them, but when we found them, it's a very exciting journey thereafter. In the villages, there is, in my next 10-15 minutes talk, I would like to focus on how villages can be made more environmentally friendly than going away from the environmental friendliness. That's what is happening slowly in the name of development. The external intervention, the consumerism, and the kind of a feeling that village should have urban facilities. All these things, when they are not very well interpreted, are causing villages to become totally dependent. Most of them have become. Like one of our speakers said that everything in their village comes from outside. I remember in 1974 even, I was born in 49, but 1974, my village used to get only 3 things from outside. One of them salt, our friend said, Karnaka Reddy Garu. Second one is matchbox, and third was kerosene oil. That's all. Whereas now consider the imports of a village. There's so many, almost everything. And exports is mostly raw material. If you take a village as an entity, with a kind of a tremendous amount of nature available to it, what they're doing today is highly inefficient, highly uneconomical. But this is the model we have given it to the villages. You know, one thought I always have is nature regenerates. And regeneration comes free for us. Regeneration includes animal giving children, plants giving fruits and flowers and wood, and whatnot, everything. The rain god gives water, sun gives sun, so many things. All these are without effort of human being, not much of effort of human being. So much free inputs available in the village, yet village is seen as the most underdeveloped entity. Very strange, I guess, a lot of paradox in our consideration, I suppose. When we walked into the villages and we looked at it as looked at the strengths, we found many of them. And their strengths, if we consider and strengthen their strengths, then the villages will, I'm very sure that regain their old Swayam Samruddhi, Pushkalam. They're the things we used to talk about the village earlier. And that is something we have to get back. And that's possible only when we strengthen the strengths and tell them, suggest them what they know and let extension of that, not something they don't know. If you give them a black box saying there's a high technology and give so and so, they'll be depending on you for everything. So you have designed, by design you made them dependent on you. It's not fair at all. So similarly, the kind of a mechanization we give it to the villagers doesn't improve the individual productivity. You know, village people are hardworking people, they want to work, but can we make the individual productivity better and better by devices, not machines, the devices. Maybe some collective devices or small machines which are suitable, appropriate, and of course affordable, as Retd brought out. So this is the kind of a thinking we must have to retain the villages. And all these activities, when you do it, will certainly ensure that our villages do not contribute to carbon emissions. At least they sustain what they are today and maybe slowly have a turning point towards a better environment. Now, there is one more thing which I would like to, I'm just sharing thoughts, not in a very sequential fashion, whatever comes to my mind. There's something called unutilized food, uncultivated food. We were walking in Jharkhand in Sodayatra, in one of tribal areas. One lady brought 28 varieties of edible leaves as a wild growth those plants. She said, "Sir, there are more than 60 here, but I could only muster 28 of them, and we live on them." So there is a great possibility of shifting our food from emphasis on food, from cultivated food to uncultivated food. And that would give us a tremendous advantage in health, like GBK brought out. And secondly, carbon emissions will be least. One of the major problems today in village is transportation of in and out. People, goods, grains, whatnot. And that transportation, not only one village, all 6.5 lakh villages, things come from far away. And this is causing a lot of pollution and extra strain on the environment. This can be avoided by having clusters of Swayam Samruddhi villages, maybe 30, 40 villages, make them clusters and let them produce what they want within the cluster. Let them supply what others want within the cluster. The supply chain should not be more than a day. You pluck in the morning, by evening distribute and come back. And what is surplus to you should only go out. Then the transportation becomes very, very minimal. And then that much environment will be certainly benefited. So these are all possible. We went and stayed in a village as we called Ganesham, where we studied villages, their aspiration, their export and imports, their skills, the surplus in the village, unutilized resources in the village. All these things, when we studied, found that there is a beautiful case for making the village better and better with their own strength. But what you need to do is that remove all those carrots we hang on the name of welfare for the sake of politics or whatever the elections they do. That's really spoiled the minds of the people. We have to change them. And changing the minds, one of our speakers said about that's more important than anything else. So villages are seen as a focus for environment friendly and make them an example of all others. The cities will change automatically because the food they have to get from the village will be much better than what they're getting now. And that will bring health and so all kinds of positive. I think a tipping point will take place where positivity comes into the entire system. if we focus on 6.5 lakh villages and make them self-sufficient, make them least import, make them least transport, and focus on uncultivated food, and try to see that their aspirations are taken care of, but their strengths are to be strengthened. And we found this amazing innovations in the villages. Now today, urea is thrown with hand or whatever the chemicals. Now, urea should not be used, but if you have to use it, let's use the least and let's not waste it. So there's one boy, Mahesh in Islamabad, he put a backpack, urea in the backpack, connected that with a pipe which he can hold like a walking stick. And he chooses the place and he also chooses the quantity. And it controls everything, no wastages. But 35% of urea or whatever is saved. Now that is advantage to the environment. So there are hand tools. Now, if you want to make Saidachari in near Suryapet, he made a mini tractor of 6.5 horsepower. Now with that, he cultivated 5 acres comfortably without even calling any labor. He and his wife, he got a trailer attached to it, about 800 kg. Then he got reverse gear for it. And together, whenever there was a requirement of labor, they made attachment. And that was fitted either to the tractor, mini tractor, or to the trailer. And that way, husband and wife beautifully, they took the challenge of not calling the labor and did it. Now, he tried the 2 seasons and he could manage to do it. Now, I'm not saying labor is not required. What I'm saying is 6.5 horsepower tractor can comfortably help a 5 acre or 10 acre farmer. Why do you need 35 horsepower tractor? Why do you need 65 horsepower John Deere tractor? Now, this appropriateness has to be examined at every level. Then when you overdo things, don't overdo things, naturally the environment is taken care of. Now, there must be a law that no one below 10 acres should use this sort of a tractor. And that's what we have to give them. The mechanization has to be appropriate and affordable, and so that our green gas house generation is least. Similarly, you have today there's a lot of wastage in drying the paddy, and they dry in the roads. All kinds of problems come up for them. Now, this wastage can be controlled by some method, and some sort of system is developed for this. There's a boy, Kishan Rao in Jagtial. He developed a small prototype to ensure that without much of shifting up and down and moving left and right, says from the field, he takes it to one machine and the machine gives them paddy ready for market. And that kind of a thing with the least energy, so we must promote or make better than that. But a lot of transportation which takes place now can be reduced in the village. Now, considering all this, my understanding is that villages people do something like they follow the formula like more from less and for many. The formula Gandhiji said, Mashelkar said, of course, nature says so. It's like putting a small seed and getting a big tree, which has lakhs of leaves and then hundreds of flowers and fruits. And these are all consumed by many. So it is a more from less for many. And there's a power of nature. Now, what does power of nature implies? Less input, more output. That is the power of this nature. Less input, more output. But on the contrary, our technology needs higher input and lower output. So my dear friends, you all know, but I would like to repeat the technology directive, and process closer to nature is additive. We have to take a trade-off between the directive process and the additive processes. Then only you will be able to sustain the environment. Only going for technology and consumerism, you all know that it reduces our environment so less that our generations are left with nothing. Now, this is what we learned from the villages. And the individual productivity which you are talking about, if that is improved upon by devices, small machines, small hand tools, which can be locally manufactured or nearby and locally maintained, locally customized. There is no post-sale arrangements, and that would certainly give them a higher productivity, low input costs, and then since there are devices and not machines, the environment will not get affected. The self-sufficiency mantra or Grama Swayam Samruddhi is a very good concept. I think I must bring it back, which we had earlier. It can come back, and when it comes back, your inputs coming from outside, spoiling the local nativity, native seeds which we are losing slowly should get back. We must have a record of agro-diversity, not only biodiversity. What all we grew in the last 50 years in the village and why we have stopped them. Do we have any seeds for last so many, whatever we had in the last decades? All this recording has to be done in the village and bring back the nativity. Old people still know it's not too late, but when they die, the knowledge fades away and the libraries are burnt when the old people die. So there's a very important point is to get the agro-diversity, get the nativities. So imports reduce and all environmental effect goes away. And then Swayam Samruddhi is possible that time. Then we have to optimize on food. Now, I think first speaker told about waste of food, optimization of food. That's very important. In our tradition, we have, I know in my house and many of the houses, combined houses, there's hardly any food left except for giving to some servants and few dogs around. They used to excellently, they used to plan even the biggest of the family, about 25, 30 people. There was no hassle. And somehow we lost the skill. We depend on somebody else to make food. We don't learn ourselves. And that food optimization is very good before cooked. Once cooked, it's a waste. And that should be avoided. And this should be perhaps made a skill, a new trade, new profession to ensure that food is not wasted out. Then Palle Srujana has been working with collectors and NGOs, politicians to suggest all these things, and even RSS we worked at a certain level. And there are positive signs are there, positive encouragement has been there, but I think COVID came in the way. But now since Glasgow event is going on, I think there is a possibility for us to look at our villages seriously so that they don't become the victim of the modernization and going against the nature. And with that, I thank you very much for all the expert speakers, listeners, and organization for giving me the opportunity. Thank you.